No, okay,
So
I was going to bring up actually that you can stream this. So yeah,
go
okay.
ahead.
So I'll try and get that together. So yeah, so basically there's this kind of issue because I've been very interested in this idea of enlightenment or awakening for a long time. I've come across people who claim to be awakened or enlightened. I'm sort of lumping those two ideas together as far as I can tell. It's the same sort of thing, and I've tried to understand what this phenomenon is, because the path of deliberately trying to seek that seems very complicated and involves a lot of commitment. So it's like one of those things where you kind of rationally try to go, well, you know, this enlightenment thing seems like a jolly good step to take to really be embedded in reality and to overcome all these, like, the downfalls of the intellect or the ego or the alien cortex, as we now call it. Okay, fine, what do I do? Why am I going there? And you start to analyze this stuff like someone who's thinking about whether to go to Oxford or Cambridge or whatever to get their degree. And I think about it, and you read these books and you talk to people. Now on YouTube, you've got all these people who are awakened, and they've got this and they've got that, and you look at the characteristics of this state, and you at the same time you're in this conscious battle with your intellectual mind that you can see is just fucking everything up, and then you look around the world and you can see it's the same phenomenon that's fucked up the the natural world, and you see we're all hostages, and then you sort of, in a way, it's like, David Icke's description of this like poetic, alien force that's causing, these negative effects. And if we all awaken, then somehow, we'll get our, strip down to the boxer shorts kind of thing and make a spear out of the nearby stick and go down to the forest and hunt some squirrels or whatever. And that's it, really. There's this kind of idea of a human existence that was like pre the formation of the ego and of culture and these kind of bigger social groups. And maybe the enlightenment or awakening thing could take you back to that sort of state of being where you have that closer connection and more healthy interaction with the natural world. Or alternatively, I guess in my mind, you've got the kind of Buddhist monk type of stereotype of someone sitting in some robes and just kind of chilling out, really, and not being that bothered about anything. And then it all sort of swirls around. I don't know if I'm being particularly incoherent, but because I don't even know what I'm talking about, but it all swirls around in your head and you just go, where does that even take you? Like, so either you just shut up and sit under a banyan tree until whatever this frame of mind is, or what does one actually do, or does one not do?
Yeah, I mean,
did you ever read a novel from Herman Melville, who wrote Moby Dick, the one called Bartleby? Because it's the story of this sort of scribe who works in Wall Street, I think, or in some lawyer firm, and he just it becomes extinct himself. Have you ever read that book? He just gives up on communication. He gives up on everything. It's an interesting small novel. It's the spirit. His spirit disappears completely in the face of the world he's living in. He completely abandons. And when you mentioned that, Bob, I just thought of this character. He's just. I can't read. If you haven't read the book, I would encourage you to read that little book. It's a good story. But I'll write it in the comments.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm not familiar with Melville. I haven't read Moby Dick, to my shame, even you're supposed to, I think. Well, maybe it's more of an obligation on Americans, but yeah, I suppose, yeah, the thing of like fading away or just like sort of ceasing to exist. Well, it's again, I think, but maybe that comes spontaneously in some cases. And, Gary mentioned the idea of a spontaneous awakening, which I understand does happen to people. But I mean, I don't know if anyone here in this interaction is awakened or not, and I wouldn't know if I could tell if I was, if I didn't do the whole sitting in a cave thing or joining a monastery, which is my stereotypical, you know, understanding of what sort of process you'd go through. I don't know how one would spontaneously awaken, and maybe I've spontaneously awakened and I wouldn't know it, you know. I mean, I've had some experiences of stuff that I could say, oh yeah, I've had this thing has happened to me, and you know, I've seen something or blah blah blah. But I mean, I don't know. For all I know, someone's just knocked me on the head, or you know, had a funny cigarette or something, and it put you in a frame of mind a week later that does something to you. I just, yeah, I guess, well, I'm talking myself into like a kind of nihilistic pointlessness of like, well, I don't know even what my own experience of reality is to any great extent that I could share conversationally with this group or any other. And it's just like almost like there's a sort of funnel where you end up interacting with this like tiny minority of people who seem to be in touch with a similar type of perspective, which has the ring of sanity about it, where the rest of the world seems completely insane. But then you sort of then look in the mirror and go, oh, wait a minute, maybe I'm the inmate and these are the other people in the institution, rather than these are the other people who've got some sort of an idea of what is reality, if that makes any sense, because I don't sound particularly coherent to myself at the moment.
Yeah, well, see, yeah, I think the point you just made, sorry, I just can't think of the words you used, but where the, you know, this awakening is something that's happened to these, happens, rather than looking at it from the point of view of the fact that you're not becoming something that wasn't always there all the time anyway. I think it goes back to what Sophie was saying earlier about the young child who gets these accretions of socialization building up over the top of their sort of initial angelic self, and it gets covered over and occluded until they don't even recognize what's inside of them themselves, and we lose it completely.
Can we cast it off in any way, though? Is there any? Can you deliberately, you know, who is it who's saying that we should recognize that, and yeah, should we get rid of it, and can we trust that perspective even?
Yeah, well, you see, that was the role that Hugh used to play with us when we were talking about these subjects and when you would bring them up, because he was impersonating a cult leader and a guru a little bit. I mean, we all agreed on that, and that was fine with me. And he would say what you're saying, Bob. You would suddenly say, "Who is it that's saying that?" And he would constantly kind of hit you or prick you and say, you know. So you need people who are. I'm not saying. Who am I to say, like, you, what is awaken? What I wouldn't even, you know, go near that word sometimes. When it started to use it, I found it a bit bizarre to using it. But I think when we had somebody of the dimension and the stature of Hugh, wherever he was leading us on this kind of quest that you're talking about, you know, just yeah, who's this person trying to change the world? Who's this person who thinks that they, and he started very well when we were doing the beginning of these meetings, and we composed the 12 desiderata things on a path that was know thyself, you know, oppose chronos, blah blah. But this had a great, for me personally, this had a great impact, because it was I felt I was under the guidance of somebody who knew some stuff, and that was very important. And that's, I think when we come to these conversations, when we go deep into this sort of stuff, I think we can reap an awful lot of good stuff from what he's put us on a good path, I'd say. You know, he's shown us a good direction, and where are the traps? And I think most people here today who've talked about it have seen those traps.
It's all traps, it looks to me.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
traps.
Yeah.
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 And this is Ramana Maharshi, isn't it? This is like, who am I? Who's thinking this? Who's
Well,
doing
yeah,
it?
but but with a different, with some flavor of him, but it's not divinely, you know, it's not only there. It's yeah, of course it's deeply deeply rooted in that, because I think that was the teaching that he had to go through in his cult and his school. So, but there's all sorts of other things that are it's not, you can't enclose. That's what I have a big problem with gurus and spiritual teaching, when they start to be in one. It starts to look like a church. It starts to look like a group and a label, and you belong to that, and that start then you that's again is bad. Don't go that way. That's dangerous. That don't get. It's nice to be able to say, yeah, that guy thought that guy posed that. But if we start to get into, even if we start to say, oh, if Hugh said that, so it has to be, we really want to keep clear from this sort of thinking, I if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think again, I'm really not an expert on the subject, but it
But
seems
that's a good thing.
Well, no, yeah, well, maybe it'd feel better to think you were an expert. I suppose it might be a bit more comforting. But yeah, no, I mean, my understanding is like, and again, I've sort of followed or had an interest in the Buddha and all of this, and it seems that this particular character would have been a bit pissed off to discover that he'd sort of launched a bunch of different sort of churches or religious organizations. So that's sort of like, maybe that's an unavoidable thing. But yeah, I mean, in theory, it's a subjective process, I guess, that you could, if you don't attach to one particular thing, there do seem to be these similar streams, though, of how to overcome the alien cortex by, yeah, I don't think so. GS. So, yeah. So how to like defeat the alien cortex, either by going into this process of sitting in a cave and making the alien cortex so bored that it goes away, basically, or otherwise by sort of looking back towards our hunter-gatherer ancestors and trying to embrace something. I think those seem to be the two kind of paths that I understand. So yeah, when you look at the famous tribes of people that are hanging in there in the jungle, they seem to have this awakened or present state of mind, or otherwise it's those monks in their robes sitting in a cave. And so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that brings back this whole city versus the farm people. I'm being sort of strongly led to doing some gardening at the moment, and I realize how little connection I have. I've overwatered some of my plants. I don't communicate with them at all. When I have no feeling for the process, which I find slightly weird. And I guess the thing that pops into my mind is, can you find this sort of awakening within the context of modern civilization at all, or do you have to physically extract yourself from it, I guess, is the question that comes to mind. Do you have to go and leave it?
It's hard to know, isn't it? It's hard to know. I don't know. Is it incompatible? I have no idea. Personal experience, I couldn't really tell you. Myself, I don't know.
I mean, civilization is a product of the brain damage caused by the alien cortex / ego / whatever intellect.
Well, you have to find a place, probably, but it doesn't have to be necessarily geographic. I suppose there is a space inside you where you can probably, I'm no teacher. I wouldn't be able to answer that question.
Well, if you're doing meditation in Hugh's the Sirius website, his suggestion was just to find a place that's quiet and peaceful and practice meditation. On the Sirius website, on the Extinctionati a while back, with his instructions on how to do proper meditation. So
Yeah.
basically, yeah, just find a place that's quiet and peaceful and practice it rigorously.
Yeah, but that's a kind of very open-ended. I mean, I'm not really looking for. I'm perplexed because it's very open-ended, and I think that comes back to that thing of you're going, well, okay, I feel like this is a viable path, or this is a path to awakening. But then you have to have a sort of level of faith, I guess, in that particular methodology, or a particular methodology, which, you know, maybe the method that Hugh described, and other people have other views on the subject, but you have to pick one and sort of stick with it, and then attempt to become a virtuosic meditator, because it's not a straightforward thing. I mean, just as a case in point, the light show phosphine thing is something that I think takes quite a bit of dedication to be able to look at your third eye and all of this stuff, and activate the what's it called, the thingy, the pineapple in your head.
Pineal gland.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, sorry, the name eludes me. But yeah, so it's like, again, you're doing. I remember reading a book years and years ago in my late teens or early 20s, which describes this idea of the spiritual supermarket, where you know, we're now in the modern world sort of exposed to, and at the time there was like a flourishing of cheap printed books before the internet, if anyone remembers that. And you could get these editions of books because there was some sort of, in the UK anyway, there was a change in some sort of cartel behavior from the publishers, and suddenly there were all these books released very cheaply, and you could buy all these books. And it was a cheap book that I found, where the guy did a sort of summary of every kind of spiritual, magical practice you can think of, and said, we're now living in a spiritual supermarket, and you can kind of wheel your trolley through the aisles, and you can pick a bit of this and pick a bit of that, and so on and so forth. And you find that you know, whatever works for you, or whatever. So, anyway, I feel like I'm very incoherently rambling, but the idea of like, okay, here, pick your method. So let's say I quite like Hugh's description of the meditation thing. It took me a little while to sort of figure out what it was supposed to be, and then somebody posted a video of an Indian lady that sort of clarified what was meant to happen. And I've been trying to do this, blah, blah, blah. And I want to say without success, but I have no sense of what success would entail anyway. And then it's like trying to sort of teach yourself how to play Chopin by, you know, just sort of sitting in front of a piano and thinking about Chopin tunes, and thinking that somehow, you know, I mean, I don't think that achieving a level of virtuosity can be done like that. You actually need someone to say, look, you need to put your fingers here, and actually before you can play Chopin, you need to learn how to play Happy Birthday and whatever.
Yeah, but it's not a technique, Bob. It's not a it's just brilliant. I mean, it's just so good because you've covered so much ground. You know, do nothing. Even I think it was
do nothing
Osho.
appeals to me tremendously, Gary, to be honest.
But that's it. But genuinely do it. Don't. There's the you that is going to do this to change you is not there to start with, to begin with.
Yeah,
it's a futile exercise.
Yeah, I know that already. Yeah, strangely enough, but I know it. And
it's just like Einstein and his persistence of the sense of things being there which aren't there. Is you know, the you that's there that you're going to change, that you're absolutely convinced is there, is not there, even though it's a very persistent illusion. You know, and the very sense of applying any effort to this is evidence that all that's occurred is that the alien cortex has divided itself into two, and one half of it is having an arm wrestle with the other half of it. And plainly, this is just not going to go anywhere at all. You've got to abandon the battlefield completely. Just walk out of the boxing ring. Just go out of walk past everybody. Go outside. Leave. Just go outside where it's quiet. Just leave the battleground. You know, and there's I think it was Osho, Bhagwan Rajneesh in his earlier days, could be mistaken, but I think he actually went through that stage on his spiritual journey, where he just sort of, oh, fuck this, and just gave up anything, just absolutely gave the whole thing up. at the point where he gave up, that's when everything happened for him. But he had to genuinely give up, like genuinely leave the area, just fucking, And I think if you're getting tired, if you feel as though you're getting tied up with what you refer to as this nihilistic inner dialogue, nihilistic, depending on how you want to pronounce it, inner dialogue, it becomes paralytic. And so maybe when that dialogue on the spiritual thing has become so paralytic, then actually go with that. Because the fact that the fact that you can make no progress in this dialogue is probably a message to stop, because it's like oh, I don't know, you might be out somewhere and end up wading in some mud, which becomes deeper and deeper and deeper until you realize you're in a terrible mire, and it's almost you've sunk up to your waist and then your chest, and it's become almost impossible to take one step forward, because it's just takes too much effort to move through the mud and slush. And so you at some case you stop, and when you stop the struggle, you've got a chance to realize that the struggle against all this is not getting anywhere. It's got no future. And that's when there's a possibility of something different. So you still are stuck in a paradox. We're always going to find, I think, that we're stuck in a paradox, because people could then say, oh, okay, well, if I stop, then nothing happens. I think you've still got to ask yourself ultimately, well, yeah, all right, so maybe nothing is happening, but what was it in me that wanted something to happen anyway, and what was I expecting?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you've got that comes back to then, getting the alien cortex to shut the fuck up for 5 minutes.
No, but don't get it to do anything, because it's just one part of it trying to get the other part of it to do anything.
Yeah,
You've got to actually just leave there. And it's not an action, it's not a movement, it's not a decision, it's not something stated in words. It's quite, in a way, outside of language and thought.
Yeah.
It's just that if that starts to arise, you just let it go, to just abandon it. It'll repeatedly return to tempt you back into this self-reinforcing thing where the alien cortex divides itself and argues with itself, which only ends up being a kind of isometric exercise that the alien cortex engages in to strengthen itself.
Yeah.
So the only way. Go on, sorry.
I just felt like I want to narrate, like, my inner talk is going, Gary is telling me to do shamatha. And it's like this endless thing. But yeah, just look, fuck off voice in my head. Fuck off. So,
it's not.
Well, don't even tell it to fuck off, because that's still part of you.
Yeah.
You've got to kind of just, it will arise to a certain extent, and you become aware of it. As soon as you become aware of it, you just leave it.
I think in the description that Hugh was giving of this, the meditation that he was suggesting would follow, I think the image of the phosphines was quite interesting, because they were pure products of a visual part of the brain that is not lights that are perceived. So they're not coming from the outside world, and they don't follow the normal neural pathways. They are pure products of the alien cortex, of this kind of, so if you are contemplating them, he was saying that it's like if you're getting the alien cortex to look at himself, and you kind of create this kind of shortcut when suddenly your attention is kind of turning the alien cortex towards itself, and in that process you can initiate a kind of destruction. I don't know if I got it right, but I could, that's the way I was understanding it. And you're not really doing anything there, because you're just sitting still and letting things happen, and just you know, I kind of like that idea, because I think the more you put it offline, the more time you spend distracting and mirroring this thing to itself, you kind of get into a place where you can initiate certain processes without even trying to analyze it. I think it's just the idea, the process is very interesting.
That's true. It's definitely interesting.
Yeah,
That's
putting the alien cortex offline, disconnecting it.
Alien cortex is being interesting.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a conversation I had with one of my more intellectual friends. We were going on and on about like spirituality and philosophy and stuff. And then at the end, he got annoyed with me because he said, "You're saying all this contradictory stuff. Are you a sophist? Do you think you're enlightened or something?" And I'm like, who wants to know and why? Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very important point. That's what it comes down to. See, so if you
And the thing is like I'm not, in the conversation, I wasn't even like trying to be a smartass. Like I literally feel like that. Like it's a
no,
literally
because see
felt.
what the other person is, the only frame that the other person would have had to make sense of this was to look at it as though you were talking from an individual ego-based self perspective. And
Yeah,
so,
like I know what I say when I was talking to him, I was semi-aware that I was being contradictory and stuff. Like when he talked to me about like religious stuff, he's saying, "Yeah, you talk about all this stuff, but what does it all mean?" I'm like, "I don't know. Like I have these dreams, but whatever gods I see in my dreams never talk. They do stuff. They create, they destroy and all that kind of stuff, but there's no words. There's just images." It just can't
yeah,
you can't understand this stuff intellectually, so I don't talk about it.
yeah, that goes back to what I was saying earlier about how you know, the alien cortex or the mind always wants to be able to experience this or somehow annex it or you know, claim it as something of its own.
Yeah,
Um,
and another thing too, it came up because his philosophy claims to be a bit of an existentialist, and then I annoyed him a little bit more for that, and he said, "Okay, then what's the meaning of life?" And I said again, "Who wants to know and why? Why do you need a meaning to life? Why? Why does it matter?"
Good
yes,
point. Good
and
point. Because
you know,
that is what you get from
that's
religious people
true.
all the time. They always tell you, but you have to have a meaning. There has to be a meaning. I mean, this creation, it has to, and that is another trap.
It's like I literally feel like that because it don't make sense. It makes no sense. These questions, they make no sense at all. Um, yeah, it just makes no sense.
See, I guess you would not ask the question. I think the question of meaning is that, I don't know, maybe it sounds too esoteric, but the meaning of a thing or the meaning that is ascribed to a thing has to be bestowed upon it from outside. Um, that you know, like if you take a hammer, for instance, it has you couldn't say it has a meaning if it's just in isolation. Somebody um, there has to be an outside which says that, oh, the meaning of the hammer is its use as a tool for making nails go in. But the hammer doesn't know anything about that, and the hammer in isolation can't have that meaning ascribed to it. Uh, um, you know, if you want to accept the proposition that you know who you really are is just everything, you know, without any sense of separation, then there's nothing outside of that. So there's therefore actually no meaning apart from just existence itself. Uh, you know, you only. I think it's evidence of our disconnection and isolation and separativeness, that we're asking for there to be a meaning. That's evidence that we're in the wrong. If you're asking that question, then you've already identified the fact that you're in the wrong place, or you're looking at it from the wrong point of view, or wrong not point of view. You know that you're inhabiting a little corner, looking out at everything else, rather than being everything else, looking at the little corner.
Yeah, it's the delusion, right? The delusion of being isolated in some kind of silo. Yeah, I mean, I have sometimes ask people if they really start talking. I'm like Earth, all life on it, you know, all the molecules and energy and the entire expanse of the ability to experience it simultaneously, and then tell me you're alone.
You are never alone, and you are never alone.
Exactly, because I don't think
You
I'm not
can't.
sure. Well, I can't speak for I can't speak for people, but how many people sit down and try to imagine the simultaneous movement and experiencing of everything?
Yeah, but that's his. That's why he was using the term psychosis as opposed to psychosis, because what is psychotic is to feel separate. What is and what the society calls psychosis is what we're talking about. Is connectedness and feeling. You see, so we're going into a thing of words again, which is a trap again. But yeah, if you look to the root of psychosis and new psychosis, that we're going into a whole new realm. But I remember something, Gary, that we were saying when we were having this conversation a week ago, roughly, about awakening again, and we were saying, how does somebody know that he is awakened, and the circumstances and that. And I was telling you, I think, or you were telling me, there's these people you come across, and even in urban areas, like that woman at the till in a supermarket could be, and you feel that you've met somebody who is totally there, who's totally connected, who's totally awakened, and without any pretense of any kind, you encounter these people in the world, whether urban or not, because you don't probably encounter a lot of people if you're in the wild, because there's not many people. But you've got these people who are absolutely unassuming, and they are there. They've got it all. So this idea of awakening can be much more simple than we've been talking about. It is there. It is there around us.
Yeah, I think one of the things that there's a great risk in making hard work out of something, but that yeah, this is it. I don't know. Maybe it's just my perspective on this, but it just seems to me that this should not be a thing that is a cause for stress and effort, and that again, that just comes back to the alien cortex having little battles with itself. And there is I remember we did actually discuss this with Hugh, but unfortunately I cannot remember what his response was regarding, what you're just referring to, this concept that this these everyday Buddhas, these people who strike you as having their act together, so to speak. Because the other side of people like that is that they appear to be unaware of it. And if you actually tried to engage them in a conversation about this, they wouldn't have a clue what you were talking about. So they're kind of awakened, but they're unconscious of it. It's in a way almost like the angelic state of a small child, that they're obviously completely connected up, but they don't know anything about it. And so there is a certain sense in which awakening in the sense that Hugh had it needs to be known. Uh, but I can't honestly, I think one of the things in having a discussion like this is to not go further than to sort of not exceed your qualifications, so to speak.
Well,
Um,
I think I remember what you were talking about. When I think Hugh said that people like that who are just automatically there, um, yeah, people like us who grow up in industrialized civilization, I think I'm not sure if it's whether or not it's a culturally conditioned thing or if it's literally like a part of your brain that automatically just does this. I kind of think it's more cultural that they pretty much give you this separate sense of self growing up, and then you have to growing up in this culture, you have to do the sort of, I guess, a good way to put it is Joseph Campbell's hero journey, as an expression to step outside the culture and to yourself and go on that journey however you express it. I don't know how to use words to express it, but
oh
yeah.
yeah, I mean it's very, also bound up in that is that little biblical quote about, that you're going to follow these teachings and become like children again. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. And
so go on, sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say, so this is gonna be kind of weird, but have you any of you seen that James Cameron Avatar movie? Um, with those Na'vi people on the planet Pandora? Yeah, I realized something interesting about that. How so the main character in that show, the reason why he was able to change and join the Na'vi people at the end is not only that he, fight the evil empire and kick them off of the planet, but the guy had nothing to lose. Like he had no attachments to the system that would have caused him to have ulterior motives. If anything, the system, like he fought a war, and so he got paralyzed, and that's why he was going into that avatar body and he felt great in there. The system took stuff away from him. It took his spine, and he had no vestments. He had no, property, no emotional investment in the system. And so, yeah, you're right. In a way, you have to turn yourself into baby again. Yeah, you have to turn yourself into baby and not have a full cup, so you're able to constantly learn new things and experience new things without being completely reflexive.
Yeah. Um, the thing is, you might become as a child again, but it doesn't mean you forget all of your life experiences or the things that you've learned. I think what that means is that um, you don't adopt that as that accretion of experience and learning as some kind of identity. It's just stuff that's there that you can use if you need to, uh, but it isn't the it isn't the it isn't the it isn't who you are. Who you are is underneath that. Um,
Well, if
Yeah,
I may,
exactly.
if I may add, this ties in very well to the attitude to collapse, because once you, I don't know when it happened for most of you, but once you realized the state of things, and when you realized that you're actually a doomer, once you give up on hope and sorts of illusions and utopias and greenwashing and all the shite that you probably have studied before you became aware, you are in a similar place. There is a parallel between what we're talking now and the initial conversation we were having about collapse, I think. Actually, to completely change the subject, because this is completely different. It's the way my brain works. Sometimes I just go doom doom. And I remember Gary said something about Paul Beckwith and his latest atmospheric rivers, and the impact of that on the various extreme events. And I was wondering, Gary, is that really new? Because I listened to most of it, not all of it, because Paul Beckwith sometimes bores me so much that I can't listen to him too long. But is that bringing something new, or do you think, or is it just?
Yeah, I think what he was saying was that obviously, the scientific community already knew about the phenomenon of atmospheric rivers, which is sort of low altitude, very wet um, air currents, which can carry vast amounts of moisture from basically the equatorial regions into the higher latitudes. The new piece of information that apparently that's just come is that is the result of the distortion of the jet stream, and which has been and the fact that as a result of that, these atmospheric rivers are now carrying moisture much further into the high latitudes than they were previously. And so they studied the actual, this was the impetus to study the effect of these atmospheric rivers on Arctic and Antarctic ice melting, and found that this effect was actually very large indeed, and extremely significant, and brings forward the estimates for increases the estimates for ice loss in the polar regions substantially. So yeah, apparently this basically the report on the effect of the atmospheric rivers on polar regions was the new piece of news that he was referring to there. Yeah. So and it basically what it does is just bring forward the estimates for ice loss. It brings them forward by many decades. I think he was talking about 5 to 7 meters of sea level rise by 2070, which is, I mean, it doesn't mean that on the 29th of December or 30th of December, 2069, the sea level suddenly goes up by 7 meters. If you look at that and spread it out between now and then, it's a meter a decade, if you want to look at that, which is massive, and that's apparently what is now occurring. So that was the essence of that. And just I wanted to make a point regarding what was said earlier about nothing to lose and collapse, is that I think this was behind what Hugh was doing with the manifesto. So what DB was saying about a person who had nothing to lose in that movie or whatever it was, being able to act, being able to act where they would not have acted before, or being able to act in a much more effective or major way, is this I the manifesto was concerned with that, was presenting a scenario that was undeniable and conclusive, and which had no escape in it, and therefore you had presenting people with a situation where they had no longer had anything to lose, and having nothing to lose is extraordinarily liberating. We all think we've got something to lose, and that's what holds us back. And I think this is one of those essential things that lies behind the sense the question of spiritual awakening is that
yeah, Gary, if I may if I may add, it's also the importance of having a breakdown to have a breakthrough. And that also is a big, I mean, personally, I mean, I have had all those breakthroughs after some breakdowns and some terrible ones sometimes. And it's just, I think that we can't, once you realize the catastrophe we're in, when I did years ago, and the terrible feeling of loss of species and plants extinctions, and the predicaments human beings are in, but also mostly the natural world, which we can't dissociate from ourselves. The breakdown that happens then enables you to realize that, you know, you have lost everything. Everything is being lost. So that's when suddenly you start another path.
Yeah, it's kind of a frightening thing to think about. But you know, when it actually occurs, you probably find an immense sense of relief. Yeah. You know, even thinking about that just for a moment, it's not hard to sort of feel the weight of all of all of your personal concerns and things that you're worried about and trying to preserve and keep and hold on to. And I'm just wondering, Sophie, we're almost at 2 hours. Do we want to end up or go on for a little bit longer? Just in case the recording ends again?
Yeah, the recording will end in about 10 minutes according to my clock, because we started at 10 minutes past the hour. So it's up to you. If you want to continue on, I'm happy to. I'm just not what anybody else thinks is grand.
Anybody else want to carry on for a bit longer, or would it be a good time to wind up?
I'm not sure. I mean, have we covered everything that we meant to? Have we talked? Because, I mean, I suppose we could go a bit longer because,
Yeah.
We
I
could go
mean,
on for 24 hours, I suppose, but
We could, yes, we could.
You know.
no. Let's make Hugh happy and go for 6 hours. Just kidding.
We have to do this, I'd say. Maybe in the winter. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Look, I think maybe just leave it there, because we can start afresh with a new topic next time, I guess. And
Well, one of the things I was wondering before that though was like, so we were talking about the what was his name, Arthur Keller, and the fourth scenario. So we have the inevitable collapse coming.
yeah,
There's nothing we can do on a grand scale to avoid it. It's gonna be ugly. Yeah, don't really expect any kind of millenarian utopian revolution to happen, because I don't know about anyone else, but I don't see the subjectivity there for that. So yeah, it's gonna be ugly. Those in power are gonna make sure everything occurs in such a way that they're always gonna be on top, which makes it even uglier. Because I feel like at the end of the day, with the system, the whole problem is class warfare and exploitation. So unless people are willing to actually deal with the power hierarchy, whatever that is, finance, ruling elites or whatever, if they're not willing to deal with that, we're just doomed. If you let the exploiters sit on top of a hierarchy and continue running the machine of exploitation. And no one is challenging that. In America especially, it's, oh, this president is bad, that president is bad, and then no one is saying the machine is bad.
Well,
no, again, go on.
oh, no, just a sort of short thing, Gary. In the scenario 4, there is two kind of curves. There's a very, very abrupt, dangerous, horrible one, and there's one that's bad, but it can be mentioned that can be a little bit softened by what you say, by challenging certain scenarios. So you know, I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I mean, that would only occur though if you get government to cooperate with you, which I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, but he would not, because Arthur Keller is, in a way, he's not a liberal, but I'd say in a certain way, he's not going to mention that on his audience that are universities and stuff like that. He's not going to mention that you can undermine. I mean, the undermined. Isn't that a funny? Undermine the. That was interesting. But yeah, that could be a subject for another conversation, because we already touched that on Collapse last week about things to do to undermine the powers that are and things like that. But I'd say we could talk about this again. We could talk about this again.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I just was reminded of when I left Oslo, I had to rid myself of a couple thousand books from my bookshelves because I was moving. And afterwards, that kind of struck me as a cool image for what a total collapse means. It's like, because to me I was like, oh my god, all those books I read, or some of them I haven't read, some of them I read many times, and you know, just to put it in perspective for myself, I had to remind myself that we're going to lose everything we've built, like music, architecture, art, literature, philosophy. Everything we ever built as human beings is going down the drain in a full collapse, and that kind of made it a bit easier to let rid of all those books I had in my bookshelf. Anyway, so I don't know if that helps anyone else, but it's like, yeah, maybe that our small little day-to-day things become irrelevant, you know, in the bigger scheme of things.
Yeah, experiences like that are very informative, I guess. I think I remember Hugh talking about that when he moved onto his boat, and how he had to get rid of a lot of things that he owned. You know, what that experience was like at that stage. But yeah, you know, when you look at what we're throwing away as a civilization, it's just, and not just, you know, noble creations, but also if we throw ourselves away completely, then we lose sort of self-conscious awareness from the planet. It may never come back. You know, so it's a significant thing to contemplate. So we'll finish it there, Sophie, before you have to re-record.
Yeah, don't forget,
yeah.
we mean to few of us to survive if possible. Okay.
Yeah, well, this is the point, but you know,
let's not
because
get
we're.
But you know, there's also this survival thing to keep in mind too.
Yeah, the become baby, return to monkey.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are we going to just have 30 seconds of silence and then stop the recording? Can everybody handle 30 seconds of silence? Is that okay? Or it's a lot longer than you think. Just start that. Yeah. All right. We're starting now. Okay. Not sure that I lost count, but anyway. So thanks everybody for contributing, and we look forward with great anticipation to the next meeting, I guess.
And there might be a meeting in the middle of the week. We'll keep watch the sub, and there will be information, an interview. Okay.
Great. Yeah. Sounds good. Okay. Thanks, Sophie. That's great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Goodbye
Thanks,
now.
everybody.
Bye,
Bye
everyone.
then.
So
Okay. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.